Our tale of the Black Death begins not in Europe, but in the heart of Asia, in the early 1340s. Here, amid the vibrant trade routes and flourishing cities, a deadly affliction silently emerged. Unknown to the merchants, travelers, and caravans that connected east and west, this disease would become one of the deadliest killers in human history. The origins of the plague are shrouded in mystery, but historians believe it likely originated in the steppes of Central Asia. It spread along the Silk Road, the ancient network of trade routes that connected Asia with the Middle East and Europe. Merchants, travelers, and armies moving along these routes unwittingly became the agents of transmission, carrying the disease over vast distances. As the plague traveled, it struck major trade hubs, reaching the Crimea and the Black Sea region. Here, the disease found its way onto trading ships headed towards Europe. These ships carried not only silk, spices, and other goods, but also rats and fleas, the plague's silent vectors. The interaction between people from different regions, the exchange of goods, and the movement of rodents in these bustling trade centers created the perfect storm for the spread of the plague. In this era, knowledge about disease transmission was rudimentary at best. The concept of germs was centuries away, and the understanding of how diseases spread from person to person or through animals was limited. Thus, as the plague moved along the trade routes, there was little understanding or means to prevent its relentless march. By the time the plague reached Europe in 1347, it had already left a trail of devastation across Asia. Cities and communities along the Silk Road had been decimated, but the full horror of the disease was yet to be experienced by the European populace. The year 1347 marked a pivotal moment in the history of Europe. In Sicily, one of Europe's bustling ports, a fleet of 12 ships from the Black Sea arrived at the harbour of Messina. The townspeople, accustomed to the regular influx of foreign vessels, were unprepared for what awaited them. The ships were laden with more than just goods. They carried the seeds of an impending disaster. As the ships docked, it became apparent that this was no ordinary arrival. The crew on board were either dead or afflicted with agonizing symptoms: fever, delirium, and swollen, oozing lymph nodes. This grim spectacle was Europe's first encounter with the bubonic plague, a disease that would come to be known as the Black Death. The authorities in Messina, horrified and bewildered, hastily ordered the ships to leave, but the damage had already been done. The plague had taken hold. The bustling port, with its constant flow of people and goods, facilitated the rapid spread of the disease. Within days, the plague was ashore, infiltrating the streets and homes of Messina, beginning its relentless march across Europe. From Messina, the Black Death spread like a wildfire, uncontrolled and uncontrollable. It moved along trade routes and through bustling towns, reaching the shores of mainland Italy and soon after, the rest of Europe. The speed and scale of the plague's spread were unprecedented. Within months, it had engulfed major cities and regions, from Marseille to Tunis, from Rome to Florence, and across the Alps into the heart of Europe. The plague showed no mercy, sparing neither the rich nor the poor, the young nor the old. In densely populated cities, the disease found fertile ground, and the death toll rose staggeringly. Paris, Bordeaux, Lyon, and London were soon in the grip of the epidemic. People were dying faster than they could be buried, and societies were plunged into chaos. The plague transformed bustling metropolises into ghost towns as those who could fled, while many who remained fell victim to the disease. The Black Death manifested in 3 terrifying forms, each with its own symptoms and level of lethality. The most common was the bubonic plague, characterized by the telltale buboes, painfully swollen lymph nodes, usually in the groin, neck, or armpits. These buboes oozed pus and bled when opened. The second form was the pneumonic plague, which attacked the lungs and was highly contagious. It spread through the air, from person to person, via respiratory droplets. Symptoms included severe coughing, chest pain, and difficulty breathing. Its spread was rapid and deadly, often giving its victims only days, sometimes even hours before succumbing. The third and rarest form was the septicemic plague, which invaded the bloodstream. It caused skin and tissues to turn black and die, leading to blackening or gangrene on extremities like fingers, toes, and noses. The septicemic plague was almost always fatal, often killing its victims the same day symptoms appeared. Together, these three forms of the plague brought an array of horrors that medieval medicine was utterly unprepared to confront. The lack of understanding of the disease, combined with the rudimentary level of medical knowledge at the time, made the Black Death an unstoppable force, cutting down millions in its path. In the midst of the Black Death, a distinct figure emerged: the Plague Doctor. Cloaked in a mysterious and ominous costume, they became both a symbol of fear and a beacon of hope. Their garb was peculiar: a long, waxed coat or gown atop leggings connected to boots, gloves, a wide-brimmed hat, and most notably, a beaked mask. This mask, filled with strong-smelling herbs like lavender, mint, and camphor, was designed based on the miasma theory, the belief that bad air spread disease. The glass or crystal spectacles protected their eyes, and the entire ensemble was thought to shield them from the plague's miasma. These plague doctors were often not experienced physicians. Many were second-rate doctors, or even without medical training, willing to risk exposure to the disease. They performed a variety of roles, from treating plague victims with rudimentary and often ineffective methods like bloodletting and lancing boils, to recording death tolls and witnessing wills. Their medical practices, based on the limited understanding of the time, did little to cure the plague, but were a desperate attempt to combat an otherwise seemingly invincible foe. One of their most distinctive tools was a cane or staff. This was not just a symbol of their profession, but a practical tool used to examine patients without direct contact, undress the sick, and indicate areas needing attention, thereby maintaining a safer distance from the contagion. They also used it to measure what was thought to be a safe distance from the infected. The plague doctor's costume, though rooted in flawed medical understanding, inadvertently offered some protection against infectious bodily fluids and respiratory droplets. It is a striking reminder of the era's medical practices and the perpetual battle against infectious diseases. The image of the plague doctor, with their beaked mask and long coat, became etched in the public memory, a haunting symbol of a dark chapter in human history. The Black Death was not a one-time event, but a series of recurrent nightmares. Each wave, over centuries, reignited fear and suffering, challenging the resilience of populations and reshaping societal structures and responses to public health crises. In the annals of the Black Death, the story of Eyam, a remote Derbyshire village, stands as a poignant testament to human courage and sacrifice. In 1666, this village faced a fateful decision that would etch its name in history. The plague arrived in Eyam through a bale of cloth from London, harbouring fleas carrying the deadly disease. A tailor's assistant named George Vickers, the first to handle the cloth, became the plague's initial victim in the village. Eyam's plight worsened rapidly. Within months, dozens had perished, and fear gripped the heart of the community. But it was in this climate of despair that the villagers, guided by their newly appointed rector, William Mompesson, and the ousted Puritan minister, Thomas Stanley, made a remarkable choice. Understanding the grave threat the plague posed to surrounding areas, they collectively decided to quarantine themselves, to prevent the disease from spreading beyond their village. Mompesson and Stanley, despite their religious and political differences, united to persuade the villagers. Their plan was radical and selfless. The Earl of Devonshire, living nearby at Chatsworth, promised to send food and supplies if they agreed to this self-imposed isolation. Mompesson vowed to stay with his parishioners, willing to sacrifice his own life rather than risk the spread of the plague to neighbouring towns. The impact of their decision was profound. Families saw loved ones succumb to the disease, yet remained steadfast in their commitment to quarantine. The village of Eyam did not flee from death. Instead, they faced it with a resolve that saved countless lives beyond their borders. A community's decision to face a deadly threat together remains a powerful example of collective human spirit and sacrifice. Although the Black Death receded by the early 1350s, its impact resonated for centuries, spurring advancements in sanitation, medicine, and societal structures. From the depths of despair to the heights of human ingenuity, the Black Death story is a poignant reminder of our shared history. Thank you for joining us on this profound exploration. Learn more now at Brain of History.